Now page 74. And so in this teaching 6, we started yesterday. So basically two things are brought together. First, Gyoba Rinpoche gives us a more practice-oriented, you could put it that way. I think one way of looking at all these different ways of presenting like the same kind of material, such as in this context, how do you divide Buddha's teachings? Clearly in the sutras, in the tantras, it says the Buddha turned the Dharma wheel on 3 occasions. It doesn't mean that he only taught 3 times, but that throughout his whole life, when he was teaching, like for at least 45 years, you can divide those into 3, sometimes called the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So there's another concept like this. So far in this chapter, Gyoba Rinpoche didn't use that expression, but he talked about the division into what we can call exoteric and esoteric. Exoteric being the paramita, or the perfections, or the characteristics, lakshana, vehicle, and then also the division into the secret mantra. Then in terms of, you can also divide them into the greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle. And so here he gives us a practice-oriented definition of these divisions. He says that rather than focus on that the texts themselves, or the sutras themselves, or the tantra themselves, or the practices themselves, as somehow inherently having the qualities of being Hinayana or Mahayana, or characteristics or secret mantra, see and understand that all these levels, when Buddha says that there's the Hinayana level, there is the Mahayana level, there is the Vajrayana level, see all these levels as referring to the levels of maturity with regards to our motivation. So what are we practicing these practices? Like, what motivation motivates us to practice these practices? So if the motivation is to merely limited to getting something that we want, or getting rid of something that we don't want right now, right here, that doesn't even qualify as spiritual practice, according to Atisha's 3 capacities. In spiritual individuals on the path have 3 capacities. The smallest capacity is the individual capacity, the personal. And within that, it's even further divided. The smallest one is the ability to not just think about immediate satisfaction, immediate context, but to think in terms of beyond this lifetime, towards the attainment of future lifetimes as a human being, or as a being in the Devaloka. That puts you on the capacity, that tells you have the small capacity. The middling capacity is the capacity of seeing beyond this and even future lifetimes, and seeing the need and the necessity to uproot the very causes of cyclic existence, of circling around, wandering around, to cut to the very root of it, which is to achieve freedom from the afflictive emotions with regards to ourselves. So that puts you in the middling. To further evolve into the highest capacity is when we see not only ourselves need to be free, not only ourselves are looking for happiness, but that all beings kind to us as our mothers have been are also looking for the same thing. And therefore, how can we only think of ourselves? We have to extend this desire to be free from suffering, to achieve lasting happiness to all beings everywhere. So Gyoba Rinpoche says, That is the motivation that we should strive for. That is the motivation that we should evolve into. And when we have that kind of motivation, then no matter what we practice, even technically individual or lesser vehicle practices can now turn into great vehicle results because it's determined by our motivation. Then more specifically, he ties this to, and he says, then concretely, when we talk about practice, Dharma practice, the process of becoming free from suffering, the process to arrive at happiness, what are we really talking about? We're really talking about, in simple, concrete terms, maybe not very exciting to some people, but Gyoba Rinpoche says, it's simply to be summarized by avoiding the 10 non-virtues and cultivating the 10 virtues. The 10 non-virtues are the 10 non-virtues that are related to activities of body, speech, and mind. On the physical level, it's the non-virtue, the unskillful action of killing, harming, the unskillful action of stealing, taking that which does not belong to us without permission, depriving someone else of what belongs to them instead. And thirdly, sexual misconduct. And then there is the 4 that pertains to speech. So deceptive speech, lying, divisive speech, speech that causes this person to become angry with that person, and this person to become suspicious of that person, and this person to not like that person. Divisive speech. And then destructive speech, speech that hurts others, that harms others. And then distracted speech, mindlessly blah blah blahing away, especially thinking that this is just insignificant blah blah, so it's fine. That can create a lot of. So unmindful speech actually creates a lot of problems in the world. We don't even mean it. We didn't even see, like, actually, this will have this kind of impact. Then we just blabber away. And then, along the way, problems come. Problems come. So, distracted speech. So, these 4 types. And then the third group is the mental actions, summarized as mentally always I want, coveting. Coveting what we cannot get, what other people have, whether it's things, conditions, name, fame, things like that. And then resentment and hatred. And then the third is what's called wrong view. And principally the wrong view of actions don't matter. And all the variations of those types of views. Actions don't matter. Whether you arrive at actions don't matter based on this ordinary sense, or even, more dangerous perhaps, it's like, because of emptiness, therefore actions don't matter. That is a very serious type of wrong view. So these are the 10 non-virtues. The opposite qualities, the qualities that are the opposite of this, they are the 10 virtues. Instead of killing, we protect and preserve life. Instead of stealing, we cultivate generosity. Instead of committing and getting involved in sexual misconduct, we are respectful. We practice restraint with regards to desire. so and so on and so forth. Those are the 10 virtues. And Kyoba Rinpoche says, if you want to concretely say, what is Dharma practice? It's these two sets. Knowing the set to avoid and knowing the set to engage in. Kenjen Rinpoche often says, like sometimes we get so excited, especially those of us who are new, or sometimes even people who are not so new, we get so excited by the more external trappings. Maybe not even trappings, we could say. We kind of misunderstand, the role of things that are more kind of like tools to help us cultivate the 10 virtues, avoid the 10 non-virtues, Actually, things like this, yeah? Things like this, things like, all these things. Sometimes we get so distracted and we want to tell everybody about these things. And some people, because of their karma or whatever, like, oh wow, they are impressed, But then some other people like, what? That's kind of weird, But, or he said, Rinpoche said, we get so excited again, like, oh, this mantra is good, that mantra is good, this deity is good, that deity is good. And then we go and want to share with people, oh, you should do this mantra, you should do this deity, you should meditate this, you should do that. It says, and meanwhile, 10 virtues, 10 non-virtues, completely don't know, don't remember. Some people don't even know what the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues are. Some Dharma practitioners, If you don't know what they are, because you have already arrived at a state where you do not create the 10 non-virtues, where you are engaging the 10 virtues, excellent, congratulations. But most of the time, you don't know those because you are in the middle of doing all the things that are harmful. And then you still think, oh, I'm a Dharma practitioner. And then finish, Rinpoche says, when people ask you, right, again, because Buddhism, we're in a place, most of us are in a culture where Buddhism is not the main thing. Or even those of us who are in Asia, Tibetan Buddhism sometimes is not the main thing. And then other people misunderstand what Tibetan Buddhism is. And in part or largely because of how people who practice Tibetan Buddhism behave. They get excited by all these methods and forget what the essence is. So when people say, "Oh, what is your practice?" "Oh, I chant this mantra, I do this, I do prostrations, I this, that, I circumambulate sutra, stupas, I this and that, I turn, prayer wheels, this, that, And he said, when you say things like that, yeah, some people will agree, most people will not agree, and some people will even be opposed. Right? At best, some people are impressed. Most people just like, oh, okay, whatever. And then some other people actively against what you just said. He says, but if people ask you, what is your spirituality? What is your practice? And you say, I do my best not to harm, not to kill, not to steal. I do my best to engage in truthful speech, helpful speech, harmonious speech, mindful speech. He says, who in their right mind will disagree? Who in their right mind will say, oh, you're a terrible person. Your religion is bad. Nobody. Everybody will, when you say that, they're like, oh, well, Yeah, maybe some will say, well, good luck, it's not possible. That's about the strongest objection that you'll probably hear. Yeah, maybe some evangelical Christians, like will say, no, morality doesn't work. You have to accept Jesus Christ as Lord. But that's probably the strongest objection you'll get. Oh, well, good luck. It's not going to work. We are sinful people, you know, at most. But deep down, even saying that, people get it. Like, those are good things. Richard said, sometimes people, this is maybe more to do in cases in Asia or even in the West, like, centers sometimes say, our neighbors don't like us, because we do smoke puja, we do fire puja, we have drums and bells and cymbals. And then he said, yeah, of course, if the main thing your center is known for is doing those things in a culture that is not familiar with those things, of course they're going to object. But if mainly people associate your center with, oh, these are people who minimize causing harm, minimize telling untruthful things, speak harmonious speech, then he says, nobody is going to come complain about you. In fact, they will support you. They will support you. There's a forest monastery in Virginia that we went to visit. The abbot there, a Thai forest monastery. The abbot there said that because of their zoning and all that, when it finally came time for them to go to the county to ask for, to permission, then the county had to do a hearing, inviting the local community. And so many people turned up to that hearing. And they passed it. And these people showed up in support. And this is in fairly rural Virginia. Not the coastal liberal elites necessarily. But they came in support, and the town, the county official said, most of the time when we have these hearings, nobody comes except for the people who are making this proposal. And when we have people coming, they only come to complain. We've never had people come in such big numbers to support. This is because this particular monk, this particular abbot, showed them, what Buddhist practice is really about. So it's easy, for us to kind of forget and get kind of mistakenly thinking, that the methods themselves is what we do. No, the methods bring us to a place of being able to actualize these virtues and be free from these non-virtues. So here, Gilbert Rinpoche emphasizes this. 74. Likewise, all the trainings on what must be practiced are included in the 10 wholesome deeds, the 10 skillful actions. After the vows of individual liberations have been taken, so once we take the individual liberation vows, which for lay people is summarized by the 5 precepts, then these are the things that must be done. These are the things that we have to observe. They are everything you must train. You must train in after arousing bodhicitta. So he's saying, after giving rise to the intention to become awakened, what do we have to practice? We have to engage in the 10 virtues. And finally, after receiving empowerment, there is no samaya that is not included in them. So here basically he is referring to what in Tibetan tradition called the three vows, which is the three levels of trainings that if you practice Tibetan Buddhism, maybe not immediately, but eventually these are the three sets of vows that you have to guard. First is individual liberation. So depending on whether you are monastic or not, there are different vows, but mainly the five precepts of the laity. It's said that they are the root of all the others. If we can keep those five really well, and of course there are layers and layers of keeping those five, definitely. And we have to start with, at the very least, the literal layer. That's individual liberation. Then, when we give rise to bodhicitta, as in Mahayana bodhicitta, then what is the bodhisattva practice? It's also the practice of giving up the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues. And then he says, finally, when you receive empowerment, and in the context of empowerment, there are these things called samayas. What is the samaya? It's the samaya of avoiding the 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues. Of course, in other contexts, there are detailed, samayas, kind of like the samayas associated the 5 Buddha families. And there it has to do more with methods, such as the samaya of the 5 Buddha families include things like, to never be separated from the vajra and bell. So that means on the outer layer, having, a set of these ritual implements. That's on the external level. But through having a set of these ritual instruments, and when you see them, you are reminded of all the principles and qualities associated with. I did one explanation recently, last Wednesday. I think now it's on the Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel. Significance of mala, significance of vajra, bell, damaru, later, we'll add, prayer wheel, Pumbaa, this, that, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. When we have, so there are samayas like this, but all those samayas, what are they meant for? They are meant for avoiding the 10 non-virtues, relinquishing the 10 non-virtues, and cultivating the 10 virtues. And so, he continues, he says, moreover, to abandon killing, a misdeed of the body, and practice it with the aspiration to unsurpassed awakening, then that act of abandoning killing brings that intention to perfection, and its respective result, unsurpassable awakening, will be attained. So if you abandon killing, right? If you give up killing, because of the aspiration for unsurpassed awakening, and the reason for this unsurpassed awakening is so that all beings without exception can be led closer to enlightenment, then then your practice of abandoning killing will contribute to that result. Likewise, by practicing it with the aspiration to the awakening of a hearer or solitary realizer, then the corresponding level of awakening will be achieved. But to abandon killing, to give up killing, this is neither greater nor lesser vehicle, nor the intermediate vehicle, nor the Vajra vehicle, because no matter what level we are training, if we enter the Buddha Dharma, to abandon killing, to give up killing, is the baseline. Next line on page 75. The aspiration that motivates you in the practice is what makes the practice then greater or lesser vehicle. Accordingly, the result that is achieved is the one that corresponds to the aspiration to awakening made with regards to the 10 non-virtues that are abandoned. We could even say, like you could be practicing the 10 virtues or avoiding the 10 non-virtues completely because somehow you figured out, you're like, if I practice the 10 virtues and avoid the 10 non-virtues, my neighbors, my friends, my business partners, they will all love me. Then, Kyobara Rinpoche says, then your practice of the 10 virtues, your avoidance of the 10 non-virtues will give you a good life here. But it will not lead to freedom from samsara. And so this is an important point. This is also what he is saying. Because we could, be observing these rules of training out of fear. Fear of censure, fear of criticism. We could be practicing the 10 virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues out of the 8 concerns. Don't want loss. Don't want criticism. Don't want bad name. Don't want suffering. Want praise. Want pleasure. Want fame. And want gain. Then your practice of the 10 virtues and the avoiding the 10 non-virtues will bring some temporary good. But it will not lead to freedom from confusion. On the part of the abandoning of those 10 non-virtues, there is no greater or lesser vehicle. Therefore, don't arouse a limited intention, but arouse relative bodhicitta. When we put it in ordinary language, not in very technical Dharma language, what is relative bodhicitta? It is the intention. It is the intention of, I shall become a Buddha. I want to become Buddha. As simple as that. More technical Dharma language, I will become a Buddha because of love and compassion for all beings. The practice of the 10 wholesome deeds should thus be governed by this intention. The intention of wanting to become Buddha. If it is not done like that, but only with concern for your own welfare, then that practice of disciplined conduct cannot be said to be pure. So he quotes the Uttara Tantra. One who maintains disciplined conduct for his own sake and has no affection for the beings with degenerate disciplined conduct, elevates only himself with the pure treasure of disciplined conduct. But someone like that cannot be considered a noble one with pure disciplined conduct. So even the disciplined conduct of the practicing the 10 virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues, they are the pure disciplined conduct. But if you practice them with a limited intention, and even worse, if you practice this, and then on the basis of that, you look down on people who don't practice, you judge the people who don't practice, then your practice is stained, meaning not pure, stained by arrogance, stained by pride, and stained by rigidity also. So our own kind of training should be our own training, but motivated by, if we train in this way, then we can be more helpful to others. Then our own training should not become a cause or an occasion for making others feel bad, judging others. So one of the things that you'll come across frequently when the Buddha, if you look at the especially the early teachings, the early sutras, when the Buddha talks about disciplined conduct, and often when he's talking about disciplined conduct, he will introduce this one important point, which is don't let your practice of disciplined conduct become an excuse or an occasion for criticizing others, judging others. And this is a very important advice because it can easily become that, for sure. It can easily become that. And then when groups of people gather, whether in the monastery, in the nunnery, in the Dharma center, this adherence to disciplined conduct can become a basis for creating also disharmony. So all of these, being skillful is really important. And being skillful means, right, balancing the standard we set for ourselves as well as the space that we're giving others, the consideration that we're giving others. Don't let your Dharma practice, inconvenience other people. And then this includes, your family, your relatives, your friends who may not share what you practice or even appreciate. We don't want to cause them to become further suspicious or alienated from the Dharma. But we also don't want to, I'll just do whatever they do. Then we're not even practicing Dharma. So it needs to be balanced with the trainings, the standards that we have set for ourselves on the one hand, and the openness and consideration and care that we have for others. Those two have to be balanced. How to balance? Not so easy. I'm not going to tell you this is balanced, this is out of balance. You have to, with honesty, with sincerity, try it, and see, and adjust accordingly. Be flexible. Don't be rigid. These lines explain that a discipline such as that is not pure. Moreover, for a bodhisattva, and so this is a section that can give rise to misunderstanding. Moreover, for a bodhisattva, it is a lesser evil, it is a lesser problem to arouse mental states combined with the afflictions of desire and aversion, then to arouse the intention of achieving freedom from suffering according to the style of a hearer, which means limited to only ourselves. So these are very strong words. But again, this is not condemning the path of the hearers or the path of a solitary realizer. Kyopa is really addressing an audience that have all taken the Bodhisattva vow. So then, with regards to those who have already taken the Bodhisattva vow, then it is true, he says, even giving in to attachment and aversion is not as dangerous, not bad, but dangerous as thinking, you know what, I'm just going to practice this for myself. I cannot think about taking care of others. I cannot think about the condition of others. I can only take care of myself. And so in this important text, it teaches falling into hell realms is not a lasting obstacle to Buddhahood, to full and complete Buddhahood. But the two stages of hearer and solitary realizer are lasting obstacles. Even this statement, right, is not literally lasting. Elsewhere in other sutras, in other Mahayana teachings, we learn that although it is often said, the state of the result of a hearer and the result of the solitary realizer, if you achieve that, you will have lasting obstacle to achieving Buddhahood for the sake of others. But in other places, other sutras, other commentaries, we learn that actually it's not literally true. This is just to state a point and to state it very strongly. And very specific to the context of talking to those who have already taken the Bodhisattva vow and encouraging them not to fall back on this smaller capacity, because once you embark on the Bodhisattva path, we are going to meet a lot of conditions, situations, and challenges that will persuade us, not so much persuade us back to like, I'm not going to practice Dharma anymore, but that will persuade us to practicing the Dharma only for our own condition, our own benefit. So that is said to be very dangerous for those who have taken the Bodhisattva vow. And if we are honest about it, I think, you could say that probably every day we have moments like this where we break this vow, so to say. If we're really honest about it and examine our own motivations, our feelings, our thoughts, we don't go all the way to, I'm just going to engage in all the afflictive emotions. We still have enough understanding to say, no, those are bad. But then we kind of pull into that corner and say, now I'm just going to protect myself. I can't think about protecting others. That feeling is what Kyopa is warning against. Kyopa is not criticizing the hearers and the solitary realizers. In many other places, he praises them, he tells stories about them, he makes like prayers to them. Here is talking about this falling back into that motivation. Thus, the awakening of the hearers is an inferior result, and therefore it is not the awakening you should aim for. Rather, that kind of intention, that kind of falling back into only thinking of yourself should be completely abandoned. The practice of the 10 wholesome deeds must be governed by the bodhicitta of a bodhisattva. The 10 wholesome deeds are everything that you must do after you have taken the vows of individual liberation. So on the level of individual liberation vows, they are exactly what we should be cultivating. Then, under the context of bodhisattva vow, the avoiding of the 10 non-virtues is called the discipline of restraint. Now, one way to summarize bodhisattva training is there is the discipline of restraint, there is the discipline of engaging in good, and there is the discipline of benefiting others. And this is another way to kind of summarize what a bodhisattva's training consists of. A bodhisattva's training consists of restraining oneself from unskillful actions, actions that cause suffering, actions that are motivated by the 3 poisons. Then there is the discipline of engaging in beneficial things, in good things. And finally, there is the discipline of benefiting others. So then, avoiding the 10 non-virtues is what the discipline of restraint essentially is. And then, on the level of Vajrayana Samayas, so they are also the samayas after you have received empowerment that ripens what is not ripe and inspires realization of what is not yet realized. So an empowerment is a method of maturing what is not yet matured and gives energy to realization of what has not yet been realized. And then quickly, what are the 10 non-virtues that must be abandoned? The 3 of the body, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. 4 of speech, lying, slandering, harsh words, and useless talk. And the 3 of the mind, covetousness, harmful intention, and wrong views. As such, there is nothing difficult to understand about Dharma practice. It is about doing and not doing. Isn't it all about giving up the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues? If someone isn't practicing the Dharma, that's what's called a non-Dharma. The Dharma shouldn't be blamed, or else the negative karma that results in your tongue being raked by 500 plows in hell will be occurred. Don't say the Dharma don't work. Being raked by 500 plows. People these days have become very fashionable. I remember seeing my grand aunt. They did this. The tongue scraper, This reminds me of the raking the tongue. Now I see young people having these tongue scrapers. That was fashionable during my grandmother's time. Now it's coming back. But be careful, don't insult the Dharma, so to say. It's not that the Dharma is vindictive, okay? Don't take these things so literally. Yeah. Oh, you have insulted the Dharma, and you'll be raked with a plow for 500 plows in hell. It's saying, what is Dharma practice? Dharma practice is at the heart. Avoiding 10 non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues, and then avoiding and practicing based on bodhicitta. All of that is true Dharma practice. And if you're not practicing those things, you could carry your mala and count your mala down to dust, You can turn your prayer wheel, until the prayer wheel can turn by itself without you turning it. Yeah? You can chant mantras till the cows come home and leave again and come home again, Nothing is going to change. And when nothing changes, meaning suffering continues and suffering even accumulates, then you say, oh, the Dharma doesn't work. Look how many tankas I already bought. Look how many prostrations I already made. Look how many mantras I already chanted. Look how many stupas I already built. Look how many committees I've joined at the Dharma Center. All those things, while very helpful, very necessary, very useful, they are all completely useless if the actual point is gone. Then, if the actual point is gone, he says, don't blame Dharma, okay? Otherwise, your tongue be raked by 500 plows in the hell realms. It's going to happen. What is an example of that? An example is the Pandita with the blue skirt. For him, the negative deed of teaching non-Dharma as Dharma ripened. This is a story of the Pandita with the blue skirt was an Indian monk who was expelled from his monastery because of his breaking the celibacy vow. He traveled to Tibet and taught wrong teachings in the form of supposedly some termas. So at some point, the earth opened and he fell in, So this is a story, that Kyopa's students know. Yeah? So he didn't elaborate. Therefore, if you can't practice the Dharma, don't blame it on the Dharma. Practice the 10 wholesome deeds! Exclamation point. That's Dharma practice. Meditative absorption will arise when you practice the 10 wholesome. So now he's linking it to. So maybe, some of his students say, wait. What happened to meditation? You are only talking about, practicing the 10 virtues. Then nothing explicit about meditation. Don't we need to practice meditation? Don't we need to have wisdom? Isn't that the 3 trainings, right? Discipline, conduct, meditative concentration, and wisdom? He says, when you practice the 10 wholesome deeds, with the proper motivation, with the proper understanding, and everything we'll be talking about right now, right? When you practice, when you cultivate the 10 virtues, automatically, meditative absorption, your heart becomes steady. Now, I like this word now, this translation, steady, rather than absorption or single-minded. That's too narrow. The mind becomes steady. No longer being excited. No longer, moving. So meditative absorption, the steadying of the mind will arise. How should meditative absorption be understood? It is when through the practice of the 10 wholesome deeds, there is no longer any regret in the mind stream. So as it turns out, one way of thinking about avoiding the 10 non-virtues is to have a clear conscience. And what gets in the way of the mind settling? Conscience is not clear, as we would say. It is when through the practice of the 10 wholesome deeds, there is no longer any regret in the mind stream. Conscience is clear. Then the mind is able to rest in whatever absorption you wish for. Meaning, now the mind is able to rest. I want to today rest in the virtue of loving kindness and goodwill to all beings. Then easily the mind would go in that direction. I want to today be sensitized to the suffering of beings and to develop this compassion of wanting to free all beings from suffering. Easily, the mind. I want to now absorb the mind in, engage the mind in my Buddha identity through deity yoga. Easily, the mind. We cannot see ourselves as deity. We cannot hold the visualization of ourselves as deity. We cannot practice metta. We cannot practice mindfulness of breath, in part because our conscience is not clear. So here, Kyopa, instead of giving tricks and techniques to control the mind, oh, you should meditate in the morning, oh, you should meditate at night, oh, you should hold your breath this way, that way, which other places, here and there, Kyopa would teach this, but these teachings to the assembly means, when you get right down to it, if you follow this, no matter what style, what inclinations you have, what likes and dislikes you have, this is applicable to all of you. That's why it is said earlier when we read, this genre of teachings to the assembly, is very helpful for everyone. Because what he says here equally applies. Then to specific students, he may say, okay, you need to practice holding breath, vase breathing. But that is only particular to this or that individual in their circumstances. And those kinds of instructions, those kinds of teachings, in theory, we should get from our Lama. Whoever we have that relationship with, we get it from them. We don't just pick up a book and go, oh, I should practice this. We don't go to the internet and listen to those teachings that are very specific to specific conditions and situation and go, maybe I need a triple bypass. Would you do that? Because it's so fancy. Yeah, imagine, signing up for a triple bypass retreat. Why? Well, because it's available. Okay, fine. On Zoom home retreat of how to do a triple bypass heart surgery. Okay, you're not doing it on yourself. But imagine doing that and going, that must be the best. When in fact, you need some aspirin. Who can tell you? Well, in theory, the Lama that you're working with, the Lama that you have the chemistry and the karma with, is able to help you that way. Otherwise, take to heart teachings to the assembly. There are teachings to the assembly, there are pith instructions. Pith instructions are specific to individuals in their own conditions and situations. But of course, all of us, I want pith instructions, I want pith instructions, I want pith instructions. Do you know how to use them? And who is giving them? Yeah. Is it applicable? Is it helpful? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Then, when things go wrong, we blame the Dharma. Watch out, or you may get your tongue raked in the hell realms with 500 plows. Chanju sem chorim poche ma ge ba nam ge gyu che ge ba nyam ba me ba yang go ne gong du be war shun. Okay. See you all tomorrow. Bye bye.